Have you ever wondered why your thoughts seem to take over without warning? One moment you're focused on something important, and the next, your mind starts wandering to something completely unrelated. Why does this happen? What's behind this constant stream of thoughts? And why does it feel like they're in control, not you? Does it feel like there's an invisible thinker driving all these mental processes? Today, we're diving into these fascinating questions. Welcome to Stillness Unfolded. In this video, we'll explore the intriguing nature of thoughts, emotions, and the awareness that lies behind them. We'll uncover how the Buddhist teachings help us understand the connection between our mind and our emotions, and how mindfulness can be the key to breaking free from the mental chaos. Before we dive deeper, I encourage you to stay with us throughout this video, as it's packed with insights that will shift the way you perceive your thoughts and emotions. If you find this content helpful, please drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback helps this channel grow and brings more insightful content to you. This video contains a lot of valuable information, so be sure to watch it all the way through to get the full picture. Let's begin exploring the mystery of the mind and its power over our daily lives. Chapter 1. The Mystery of Thoughts. As we continue to explore the nature of thoughts, it becomes clear that our minds are often filled with an endless stream of them. These thoughts don't ask for permission to appear, they simply emerge. It can happen when we're in the middle of an activity, washing the dishes, driving, or sitting in quiet contemplation. Out of nowhere, a thought might surface, often unrelated to the task at hand. It could be a random memory, a worry about something in the future, or perhaps a completely unrelated idea that pops into your mind. This phenomenon is so common that we rarely stop to ask where these thoughts actually come from or why they arise. What's more intriguing is that these thoughts seem to arrive spontaneously. We're not consciously directing our attention to them, yet they appear. They often don't feel like they are ours, as though they have come from some external or subconscious source. The key question that arises here is, if these thoughts are not the result of conscious intention, who or what is responsible for them? Buddhism provides a compelling answer to this question through the doctrine of dependent origination, pratityasamutpada, which is a fundamental teaching in Buddhist philosophy. This doctrine posits that everything that arises in the universe, including thoughts, is the result of causes and conditions. Nothing exists in isolation, and everything is interconnected. In simple terms, it means that our thoughts are not independent or self-generated, but instead are triggered by a complex network of prior causes. Our thoughts arise from sensory inputs, memories, emotions, past experiences, and even subtle environmental stimuli that we might not be fully aware of. For example, you might be washing the dishes, and your mind suddenly drifts to a conversation you had a week ago. The sound of the water running, the motion of your hands, or a brief memory of something else may have triggered that thought. Similarly, a faint smell of coffee might evoke a memory of a comforting morning from years ago. In each of these cases, the thought arises due to a combination of external and internal factors that you may not even notice consciously. In Buddhist terms, these are the conditions that give rise to the effect, which is the thought itself. Now, let's take a moment to reflect. Try to predict the very next thought that will arise in your mind. What will it be? Can you anticipate it with any certainty? The very act of trying to predict it may already influence the next thought. Perhaps your mind will start forming thoughts about the prediction itself rather than the original content. This illustrates a powerful insight from Buddhist philosophy. Thoughts are inherently unpredictable and uncontrollable. When we try to predict or control them, we only change the conditions for their emergence, further illustrating the absence of a permanent, fixed thinker behind them. This brings us to one of the core concepts of Buddhism, the idea that there is no permanent self that is controlling or directing our thoughts. In Buddhist philosophy, this is referred to as anatta, or no self. We tend to believe that there is an I behind our thoughts, the thinker, the controller, the one who is in charge of our mental activities. However, Buddhism teaches that this belief is an illusion. There is no solid, unchanging I that is responsible for our thoughts. Rather, thoughts are simply mental formations, arising due to the complex interplay of various conditions and causes. If we stop and observe our thoughts, we begin to notice their impermanent and ever-changing nature. Thoughts arise, stay for a while, and then dissolve. They are not fixed or permanent entities, but fluid, ever-shifting experiences. This constant flux is more like the movement of water in a stream or the waves on the surface of the ocean. Just as no wave is ever the same as another, our thoughts come and go, constantly evolving. What's important here is that there is no constant entity that is controlling the waves. They arise naturally, one after the other, due to the interaction of multiple factors. The understanding of thoughts as impermanent and without a fixed controller leads to a deeper insight. The self that we often identify with is also an illusion. We think of ourselves as the thinker, but in reality, we are simply experiencing the thoughts as they arise and pass. The I that we believe is in charge is just another thought in the stream. This realization is one of the key insights in Buddhism. It helps us see that the mind is not a fixed entity, but a dynamic, fluid process that is constantly changing. When we mistakenly identify with our thoughts, we start to believe that our thoughts define us, that they are an essential part of who we are. But this belief leads to suffering. We become attached to thoughts, we get caught up in them, and we identify with them as if they are permanent parts of ourselves. However, when we understand that thoughts are impermanent and arise from conditions, we can begin to let go of this attachment. We can begin to see that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness observing them. This shift in perspective is liberating. It allows us to step back and observe our thoughts without being swept away by them. Instead of identifying with the thoughts themselves, we begin to identify with the awareness that observes them. This awareness is not the same as the thoughts. It is the space in which thoughts arise and pass. By recognizing that we are not the thoughts themselves, we begin to free ourselves from the grip of the mind's incessant chatter. The Buddhist teaching of anatta and the impermanence of thoughts invite us to question the nature of the self we often take for granted. Instead of identifying with the mind and its thoughts, we are encouraged to recognize that we are the awareness that observes them. This understanding allows us to see that the mind, like everything else, is subject to change and transformation. It is not fixed or permanent, and neither are we. In conclusion, the mystery of thoughts, as explored through the lens of Buddhist philosophy, reveals that thoughts are not the result of a permanent self, but rather the arising of conditions and causes. Our attachment to thoughts as if they are permanent and self-generated is a fundamental misunderstanding. By recognizing the impermanence of thoughts and the absence of a fixed thinker, we can begin to free ourselves from the illusion of a solid, controlling self. We are the awareness that observes, not the thoughts that arise. This insight opens the door to true freedom and liberation from the mind's incessant grasp. Chapter 2: The Illusion of the Thinker. A profound insight that Buddhism offers us is the understanding that there is no fixed, permanent thinker behind the thoughts we experience. This is closely related to the Buddhist concept of anatta, or no self, which challenges the conventional belief that we possess an unchanging, enduring self that controls or directs our thoughts. Throughout life, we are taught to believe in a consistent, controllable identity at the center of our experiences, and this belief in a stable self gives rise to the notion of a thinker, the entity that is in control of our thoughts. But when we take a step back and reflect deeply, we begin to notice something surprising. There is no solid entity that stands behind the flow of our thoughts. Instead, thoughts arise spontaneously, driven by causes and conditions that we may not always be aware of. The Buddha encourages us to examine this phenomenon closely and question the idea of a permanent, unchanging thinker. If we pause and ask ourselves, where is the thinker behind my thoughts? What is it that is truly controlling them? We are likely to find that, just as the Buddha discovered, there is no fixed thinker at the helm of our minds. Instead, there is simply an ongoing flow of thoughts, each arising due to specific causes and conditions. This realization may be unsettling at first because it directly challenges our deeply held assumptions about the nature of the self. We tend to think of ourselves as the central, controlling force in our mental life, the one who generates and directs our thoughts. However, when we examine our experience closely, we see that what we perceive as the self is actually just another thought, an idea or concept that arises within the flow of consciousness, without any permanence or central control. The Buddhist teachings on anatta emphasize that the belief in a permanent, independent self is an illusion. According to Buddhism, we are not the fixed, solid entity we tend to think we are. Instead, we are a collection of ever-changing mental and physical processes. Our thoughts, emotions, perceptions, and even our physical bodies are all in constant flux, and none of these aspects can be identified as a permanent, unchanging self. The thinker we believe ourselves to be is not a separate, permanent entity, but simply a mental formation arising due to the interplay of causes and conditions. To help us understand this, the Buddha introduces the concept of the 5 aggregates, panchakhanda, which are the 5 elements that constitute our experience: physical form, rupa; feelings, vedana; perceptions, sana; mental formations, sakra; and consciousness, vaya. These 5 aggregates make up the entirety of our experience of the world and ourselves, yet none of them can be considered the true self. The physical body, our sensations, our perceptions, our thoughts, each of these arises and changes depending on conditions, and none of them is permanent or unchanging. The Buddha's famous words, "This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself," are a direct invitation to explore these 5 aggregates and examine whether any of them can truly be called self. When we look deeply into each of these aggregates, we come to realize that none of them constitutes the thinker we are looking for. Our thoughts, for example, arise as mental formations, dependent on conditions such as our past experiences, emotions, and even physical sensations. They are not inherently mine or me, but are simply processes that come and go. This exploration of the aggregates encourages us to examine the nature of the self in a more nuanced way. When we identify with any of these aggregates as me or mine, we create the illusion of a permanent self that is in control of our thoughts. But when we recognize that each of these aggregates is impermanent and subject to change, we begin to see through the illusion of a fixed self. For example, consider your body. While it may feel like your body, it is constantly changing. Cells die and regenerate, muscles grow and shrink, and even our facial features evolve over time. The body is not the same from moment to moment, yet we often identify with it as though it were a permanent part of who we are. Similarly, our emotions and thoughts change constantly. One moment we may feel joy, and the next, sadness, or even anger. Our thoughts flow like a river, and no single thought remains the same. The constant flux of our thoughts and emotions highlights the impermanence of what we often perceive as the self. The Buddhist teachings on anatta invite us to let go of the attachment to the thinker and instead recognize that our thoughts and emotions are not personal or permanent. We are not the fixed, unchanging entity we imagine ourselves to be. Instead, we are a collection of ever-changing processes, constantly arising and passing away due to the interaction of causes and conditions. This realization is liberating because it helps us release the heavy burden of clinging to a self that is not real. By examining the 5 aggregates and recognizing their impermanence, we can begin to dissolve the illusion of a permanent thinker behind our thoughts. This insight opens the door to liberation, allowing us to experience the freedom that comes with letting go of our attachment to the self. When we stop identifying with our thoughts and emotions as if they define us, we begin to experience a deeper sense of peace and freedom from mental suffering. In Buddhism, this exploration of the thinker is not about rejecting the self, but about seeing through the illusion of a fixed, independent self. We are not denying the reality of our experience. Rather, we are recognizing that our experience is fluid, ever-changing, and interconnected with all other phenomena. The more we let go of our attachment to a permanent self, the more we can live freely, in alignment with the natural flow of life, without being caught in the trap of the ego and the illusion of control. Through this exploration of the thinker, the Buddha invites us to open our minds and hearts to a deeper understanding of who we truly are, beyond the fleeting thoughts and emotions that arise and pass away. By recognizing the impermanence of the self and the interconnectedness of all things, we can begin to experience a sense of liberation and peace that transcends the illusions of the mind. Chapter 3: The Awareness Behind Thoughts. Beyond the ever-present stream of thoughts that flow through our minds, there lies a more fundamental and stable quality: awareness itself. Buddhism teaches that beneath the constant rise and fall of our thoughts, there is an underlying awareness that simply observes them, without becoming entangled in them. This awareness is not another thought, nor is it a mental object that can be grasped. It is the capacity to observe, to be fully present with our thoughts as they arise and pass away. Many people spend their entire lives immersed in the endless chatter of the mind, identifying so strongly with their thoughts that they lose sight of the observer, the awareness that is the true essence of our experience. We mistake our thoughts for who we are, assuming that we are the thinker behind them. However, Buddhism reveals a profound truth: we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness that notices them. The Buddha emphasized the importance of mindfulness, sati, a type of awareness that is fully present in each moment, non-judgmental and accepting. Mindfulness is not about eliminating thoughts or trying to control the mind. Instead, it's about cultivating an open, spacious awareness that allows us to simply observe thoughts as they come and go. By practicing mindfulness, we begin to distinguish between the thoughts themselves and the awareness that is observing them. This shift in perspective is crucial because it helps us recognize that the self we often identify with is not the thoughts we experience, but the awareness that perceives them. At first, the idea of separating ourselves from our thoughts might seem difficult, if not impossible. After all, our thoughts have such a powerful influence on our actions, emotions, and sense of identity. But when we begin to cultivate mindfulness, we start to notice that our thoughts are not as solid or permanent as they seem. They rise and fall like waves on the ocean, and just like waves, they cannot be held onto. With mindfulness, we practice observing these thoughts without reacting to them or getting caught in their narrative. We learn to watch them come and go without getting swept up in their current. In modern psychological practice, the benefits of mindfulness are well documented. Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, a pioneer in mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, has conducted extensive research showing that mindfulness can physically alter the structure of the brain, leading to improved focus, reduced stress, and better emotional regulation. These changes are rooted in the way mindfulness helps us create space between ourselves and our habitual mental reactions. Rather than immediately reacting to our thoughts, mindfulness encourages us to pause and observe, allowing us to respond in a more balanced and thoughtful way. This ability to create space between our awareness and our thoughts is one of the most powerful aspects of mindfulness. In everyday life, we are often swept away by the constant stream of thoughts that seem to demand our attention. We find ourselves reacting impulsively to situations, and before we know it, our emotions are in control. Mindfulness helps us break this automatic cycle. By becoming aware of our thoughts and feelings as they arise, we can choose how to respond, rather than being controlled by our habitual reactions. This ability to pause, observe, and then act with intention is what gives mindfulness its transformative power. Through regular mindfulness practice, we gradually reconnect with this fundamental awareness that is always present within us. In moments of clarity, whether in formal meditation, a quiet moment of reflection, or even in the midst of a busy day, we begin to experience this awareness directly. The more we practice, the more we recognize that the awareness observing our thoughts is the true self, and not the thoughts themselves. This realization is liberating because it means that we are no longer bound by the incessant flow of thoughts. Instead, we have the freedom to observe and choose how we respond to them. When we practice mindfulness, we create a sense of spaciousness within the mind. This spaciousness allows us to see that thoughts are simply mental events that arise in response to causes and conditions. Just like clouds drifting across the sky, thoughts appear, linger for a while, and then fade away. The awareness that observes them remains unaffected, like the sky itself, vast, open, and unchanging. This metaphor from Buddhist teachings beautifully illustrates the relationship between our awareness and our thoughts. The thoughts, clouds, come and go, but the awareness, the sky, remains constant and clear. The more we practice, the more we cultivate this spacious awareness, and the more we recognize that we are not our thoughts. This recognition is not just an intellectual understanding, but but a direct experience that can bring profound peace. When we realize that we are the awareness behind our thoughts, we are no longer bound by the fluctuations of the mind. We are free to simply observe, to let thoughts come and go without attachment. This is the beginning of freedom. In Buddhist practice, this awareness is often linked to the cultivation of equanimity, upekkha, which is the ability to maintain a balanced, even-minded awareness, free from attachment or aversion. Equanimity helps us remain calm and centered, regardless of the thoughts or emotions that arise. When we cultivate equanimity, we can observe our thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them. We can experience life more fully, without being swept away by the tides of the mind. In moments of mindfulness, we experience a deeper connection to the present moment. The mind, often cluttered with random thoughts and distractions, becomes quiet and still. This stillness is not a suppression of thoughts, but rather the natural result of observing them without attachment. We begin to see that the thoughts themselves are not the problem. It is our identification with them that causes suffering. By cultivating mindfulness and equanimity, we shift our relationship to our thoughts. We no longer view them as who we are. Instead, we recognize them as temporary mental events that arise and pass away. As we continue to practice mindfulness, we discover a profound truth. Our true nature is the awareness that observes, not the thoughts that arise within it. This understanding transforms the way we experience the world. Rather than being trapped by the fluctuations of the thinking mind, we become the clear, spacious awareness that holds all things. This shift in perspective is liberating, offering us a path to freedom from the endless cycle of thought, emotion, and suffering. Through mindfulness, we reconnect with the awareness that is always present within us, even when we don't notice it. The more we practice, the more we begin to recognize that we are the awareness observing our thoughts. And in this recognition, we find peace, clarity, and freedom from the control of the thinking mind. Chapter 4. The Interplay of Thoughts and Emotions. Thoughts are not isolated entities. They are deeply interconnected with our emotions and physical sensations. In fact, the entire landscape of our mental experience is shaped by this complex interplay. Buddhist teachings recognize that our thoughts, desires, intentions, and perceptions form a web of mental formations that constantly interact with our emotional and physical states. These mental formations do not exist in a vacuum. They arise in response to internal and external stimuli, and their effects are often felt as emotions or bodily sensations. For instance, when we feel anxiety, our thoughts often become fixated on potential future problems, worries about our career, relationships, or health. The anxiety is often accompanied by a cascade of thoughts. What if I fail? What if something goes wrong? Or what should I do about this situation? These thoughts may trigger a physical response in the body, such as tightness in the chest, a racing heart, or shallow breathing. This is a clear example of how emotions and thoughts are intertwined. The anxiety, emotion, leads to specific thoughts, and those thoughts can intensify the emotional response. Similarly, when we feel joy or excitement, our thoughts tend to be more positive and expansive, and our bodies may feel light and energized. This connection between thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations can create a complex web of experience that shapes our mental state. At times, we may feel overwhelmed by this web, especially when negative emotions such as anger or fear amplify our thoughts. The more we become aware of this interplay, the better we can understand the root causes of our mental states. Without awareness, we can become trapped in an endless cycle of emotional reactivity, where our thoughts continually fuel our emotions, and our emotions, in turn, reinforce our thoughts. Buddhism offers a powerful tool for breaking this cycle: mindfulness. Through mindfulness, we become more attuned to the subtle connections between our thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations. Instead of being swept away by a cascade of reactions, we begin to observe these phenomena as they arise. Mindfulness helps us recognize the patterns that govern our emotional and mental states, enabling us to respond with greater clarity and intention rather than impulsively. One of the key qualities emphasized in Buddhist practice to help us navigate this web of thoughts and emotions is equanimity, upekkha. Equanimity is the ability to maintain a balanced and even-minded awareness, regardless of the nature of our experiences. Whether we are facing pleasant experiences like joy and love, or unpleasant ones like pain and sorrow, equanimity allows us to remain centered without getting caught up in the highs and lows of emotional turbulence. It is a quality of mind that is not swept away by the waves of emotion, but instead remains calm, balanced, and steady. Cultivating equanimity is not about suppressing emotions or thoughts. Rather, it is about recognizing them for what they are, temporary mental formations that come and go. Instead of identifying with them as fixed aspects of our identity, we learn to observe them without attachment. We see our emotions and thoughts as passing phenomena, not as permanent parts of ourselves. For example, when we feel anger rising, equanimity helps us to notice it without identifying with it. We can acknowledge the emotion, understand it as a temporary state, and let it pass without allowing it to define our actions or behavior. Equanimity is a powerful antidote to impulsive reactions. When we face challenging situations, whether it's a stressful work deadline, an argument with a loved one, or a moment of personal failure, equanimity gives us the space to pause, reflect, and respond with wisdom. Instead of reacting immediately based on our emotional triggers, we create space between the stimulus, the external event, and our response. This pause allows us to choose how we want to respond, whether with compassion, understanding, or clarity. When equanimity is present, we can see our thoughts and emotions for what they truly are: transient, impermanent, and not reflective of who we truly are. We can experience emotions like sadness or joy without being consumed by them. Similarly, we can observe our thoughts without feeling compelled to act on them or identify with them. This non-reactive awareness gives us the freedom to respond in ways that align with our values and intentions, rather than being at the mercy of our emotional impulses. Through regular mindfulness and the cultivation of equanimity, we develop a more stable and peaceful mind, one that is less easily disturbed by external circumstances. Even in the midst of external turbulence, whether it's a difficult conversation, a personal challenge, or an unexpected setback, equanimity helps us maintain inner stability. We are less likely to be swayed by the emotional ups and downs of life, and more able to approach each situation with calm clarity. Buddhism teaches that the path to lasting peace is not through avoiding or suppressing emotions, but through understanding and transforming our relationship with them. Emotions, like thoughts, are impermanent. They come and go, and by recognizing them as such, we release the grip they have over us. Through mindfulness and equanimity, we can cultivate a deep inner peace that allows us to navigate the complexities of life with grace and wisdom. As we develop greater mindfulness and equanimity, we begin to notice how our thoughts and emotions are interconnected in a cycle. By observing them with awareness, we break free from the automatic reactivity that often keeps us trapped in patterns of suffering. Instead, we cultivate a mind that is steady, calm, and capable of responding with wisdom to whatever challenges arise. Through this practice, we come closer to understanding the true nature of our minds: impermanent, fluid, and capable of great peace. Chapter 5. Applying Mindfulness in Daily Life. Having explored the nature of thoughts, emotions, and awareness, it is now essential to consider how we can integrate these insights into our everyday lives. Buddhism is not just a philosophy or a theoretical framework. It is a practice designed to transform how we engage with the world. The Buddhist teachings emphasize that mindfulness, sati, should not be confined to formal meditation sessions alone, but should be practiced throughout the day, in every moment, in everything we do. Whether we're at work, interacting with family and friends, or eating a meal, mindfulness allows us to remain present and aware in all circumstances. One of the most effective ways to apply mindfulness in our daily lives is through the practice of yoniso manasikara, or wise attention. This concept encourages us to pay attention to our experiences in a way that leads to understanding and liberation, rather than confusion and suffering. Wise attention involves observing our thoughts, emotions, and reactions without getting caught up in them. It is a way of paying attention that allows us to respond with greater clarity, rather than simply reacting out of habit or impulse. For example, imagine you are faced with a challenging task at work. Perhaps it's a project with a tight deadline, or you're dealing with a difficult client. Without mindfulness, your initial response might be to feel stressed or anxious. These emotions could trigger negative thoughts. I won't be able to finish this in time, or I'm not good enough for this. When you react impulsively, these thoughts can spiral into further anxiety and overwhelm. However, if you apply mindfulness, you begin by noticing these thoughts and emotions as they arise. Instead of becoming consumed by them, you create a moment of space where you can observe your experience without judgment. From this place of awareness, you can choose to respond thoughtfully, breaking down the task into manageable steps, taking a deep breath, or simply acknowledging that this moment of discomfort is temporary. By practicing Yoniso Manasikara, you are able to transform what could be a stressful experience into an opportunity for growth and insight. The power of mindfulness in action is exemplified in the story of Angulimala, a notorious criminal who underwent a profound transformation after encountering the Buddha. Angulimala had been a feared bandit, notorious for his violence and cruelty. His life was driven by anger, fear, and a sense of deep disconnect from others. One day, while on his path of destruction, he met the Buddha. Through their interaction, Angulimala came to see that his violent actions were driven by his own unresolved pain and confusion. By learning to observe his thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them, he began to understand the root causes of his suffering. Through this mindfulness, he cultivated compassion and wisdom, eventually leading to his complete transformation. Angulimala's story illustrates the profound impact that mindfulness can have, even on the most entrenched mental patterns. He was able to change his entire life by simply learning to observe his thoughts and reactions. This example is not limited to extraordinary cases like Angulimala's. It's a powerful reminder that anyone, no matter their circumstances, can use mindfulness to shift their perspective and transform their responses to the challenges they face. In our own lives, we can apply mindfulness to virtually any situation, big or small. Whether it's dealing with stress, solving a problem at work, navigating difficult emotions in a relationship, or even just eating a meal, mindfulness gives us the ability to stay present and aware in the moment. Let's consider the example of stress. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when there's too much to do or when things are not going according to plan. Without mindfulness, we might react to stress by getting caught up in negative thought patterns. This is impossible, I'm going to fail, or I can't handle this. These thoughts create more stress and anxiety, which in turn feeds into further negative thoughts. Mindfulness allows us to step back from these automatic reactions and observe them with clarity. Instead of identifying with the stress or the thoughts associated with it, we notice the sensation of stress in our body and mind. By recognizing that stress is simply a temporary mental state, we can create space between ourselves and the experience. We can observe our thoughts with curiosity instead of judgment and see them for what they are, just thoughts, not facts. This space opens the door to wisdom, as we can choose to respond to stress with practical steps, such as taking a break, reprioritizing our tasks, or asking for support. Mindfulness also helps us navigate interpersonal interactions with greater compassion and understanding. In moments of conflict or frustration, we often react impulsively, without fully considering the other person's perspective. By practicing mindfulness, we can pause and observe our reactions before responding. We notice when we feel defensive, angry, or misunderstood, and we can choose to respond from a place of calm, rather than reacting based on old patterns of behavior. For example, if you are having a disagreement with a partner, mindfulness allows you to notice when you are becoming defensive or angry. Instead of immediately reacting, you can pause, take a deep breath, and listen with an open mind. This awareness creates the opportunity for better communication and deeper understanding. In daily life, mindfulness also enhances our ability to enjoy the present moment. When we are fully engaged in what we are doing, whether it's eating, walking, or spending time with loved ones, mindfulness allows us to experience life more fully. Rather than being lost in thoughts about the past or future, we can immerse ourselves in the richness of the present moment. When eating, for example, we can pay attention to the taste, texture, and aroma of our food. We can savor each bite, rather than eating mindlessly or distractedly. This brings us into a state of presence, which not only enhances our enjoyment, but also fosters a sense of gratitude and contentment. By practicing mindfulness, we begin to cultivate a deeper awareness of the moment. Instead of being swept away by our thoughts and emotions, we learn to observe them with detachment. This detachment is not about being indifferent or unemotional. It's about creating space so that we can respond with wisdom, clarity, and compassion. Whether we are dealing with stress, conflict, or simply going about our daily tasks, mindfulness helps us engage with life in a more grounded, intentional way. Through consistent practice, we develop the ability to respond to life's challenges with a sense of balance and peace, just as Angulimala transformed his life through mindful awareness. In summary, mindfulness is a powerful tool that allows us to observe our thoughts, emotions, and reactions without becoming overwhelmed by them. It helps us respond to life's challenges with wisdom, clarity, and compassion. By applying mindfulness in daily life, we open the door to greater self-awareness, deeper understanding, and a more peaceful, fulfilling existence. The practice of mindfulness is not just a method for alleviating stress or managing emotions. It is a way of living that transforms the very way we experience the world. As we've explored today, the way our thoughts, emotions, and awareness interact is a powerful and transformative process. Through mindfulness and understanding the true nature of our thoughts, we can break free from the grip of automatic reactions and create space for a more peaceful, balanced life. Remember, mindfulness isn't about stopping your thoughts. It's about observing them with clarity and letting go of the illusion of a permanent thinker. I hope this video has given you valuable insights on how to live with greater awareness and equanimity. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Stillness Unfolded for more thought-provoking videos, and share your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Your engagement helps us bring more meaningful content to you and others who may benefit from this journey. And as always, remember, this is just the beginning of a deeper exploration into mindfulness and the nature of the mind. So take what you've learned today, practice mindfulness in your own life, and observe the profound shift that begins to unfold. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay mindful, stay present,